Hello, Twin Cities and all across Minnesota. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeffrey Asamoah with Thrivedge Solutions. I'm a business consultant and a credit specialist. Today, I'm joined by Christy Thompson of Christy Legal. Now, Christy is a highly experienced paralegal and mediator in divorce and child custody. Christy, go ahead and say hello to the viewers.
Hi. And would you like me to tell a little bit about myself as well?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So I have been doing paralegal work in divorce and child custody for 13 years. I have been doing it independently of attorneys and for both parties for 12 years. And the goal of my work is three-pronged. First of all, to dramatically decrease the amount of money people spend when they divorce, to dramatically decrease the amount of time that they spend getting divorced, and to decrease the stress of getting divorced.
Christy, you have a very important work. And I'm quite sure that there are others who are watching this who will benefit from what you're doing. So, folks, if you're watching this, do connect with Christy because, again, she is somebody you would like to get to know. So, our topic today is how to handle large amounts of debt during the divorce process. Now, we're going to look at this from two ways. We're going to look at it from the legal perspective and the financial perspective. All right. So, Christy, we'll let you start off with the legal perspective. So, how do we handle large amounts of debt during the divorce process?
All right. So this is often the worst part of the divorce process because people might think that it's unfair. So after you get past the thought that this is not fair, how debts are divided when you divorce, the first thing is there are marital debts and non-marital debts. So the marital debts are those that are accrued or created during the marriage. And that's everything. That's if you both created the debt or if just one of you created the debt. And it's even if one of you didn't know that the debt was created. Because people can get a credit card or take out a loan without the other person knowing. So marital debts are divided during the divorce process. Non-marital debts are not divided during the divorce process. So the definition of non-marital debts is debts that were created before the marriage started. So that often happens like if somebody has bought a car and gotten a car loan before the marriage started. That person is just 100% responsible for that car loan because it was created before the marriage. That would apply to student loans, credit card debt, anything that was accrued before the marriage. Now, the marital debts, that could include all those same things: student loans, credit card debts, medical debt, car loans, all the stuff that was created during the marriage gets divided. To illustrate, exactly how it gets done, I'm going to create a scenario. And so let's say that Jeffrey and I are getting divorced.
Hello.
We won't decide who's at fault here because Minnesota is a no-fault state. And actually now all of the states in the country are no-fault states.
Okay.
Nobody has to say who did something wrong. And so we're going to say that we have this series of debts and we're going to divide them according to the laws. So we are going to say that Jeffrey has a Wells Fargo credit card with $7,000, and he also has a Discover credit card with $25,000.
Wait 1 second. So all these are debts?
Yes, and these are all debts.
And our limits, these are the debts. Ooh,
These are the actual debts.
Continue.
And then I have a Wells Fargo credit card with $3,000, and I also have a Discover card with $25,000 because we went on a couple vacations and Discover card.
Vacations. I remember those. They were okay.
And then we both have student loans. And Jeffrey has 100K left, and I have 50K left. And these were both student loans that accrued during the marriage. So that's why they're getting divided.
Okay.
And then we also have some car loans. We each have a car loan for 20K. And then we also have medical bills. And Jeffrey only has $500 of unpaid medical bills, and I have 1,500 because historically women tend to have more medical bills.
Okay.
And so when we add up all those debts, we come to $252,000 of debt.
Wow.
Marital debt,
You said 252,000?
$252,000. Yes. Whew. And if you're not freaking out right now, that's because it's not your debt. If it was your debt, you'd be freaking out. And one thing to know is 401k loans are not marital debt because they're not like a debt in the same sense as a credit card or an auto loan. A 401k loan it's just a subtraction of the value of your 401k. So when you're divorcing, say your 401k value is 108, but if you have a $25,000 loan on that, the value of your 401k is really 155,000. So it's not a loan that gets divided during divorce.
Okay.
It's because a lot of people say that to me and then they're like, oh yeah, I have a loan on my 401k. And I'm like, no, that's not division of marital debts. So we have this $252,000 of marital debt. How are we going to divide it? We are going to divide it based on the legal principle of ability to pay. And what that means is whoever earns more pays more of the debt. Now, people are going to be like, that's not fair because I only created like 20% of this debt. But the reason that it's this way under the law is because the person who earns less really doesn't have the ability to pay all that debt. So all that debt isn't going to get paid, and all the creditors are not going to get paid.
Hold on, Christy. Are you telling me that since you were the one that decided to go on those vacations or to book those vacations that we went on,
Yep.
and I guess at this point, we're probably going to figure out who earns more here, but I happen to be the one that earned more. I'm responsible for most of that debt, even though you spend the most on those vacations. You decided to buy everything else.
You wanted to go on those vacations too.
At this point, I'm thinking it just might be cheaper to just stay together at this point. But come to
Cheaper to keep her.
Isn't that a movie? That was a movie, right? That's a line from somewhere. So
I forgot where.
okay.
And so, yes, Jeffrey, you earn $180,000, or no, I'm sorry, $160,000 a year. And I only earn $80,000 a year.
So hold on. I'm doing the math in my mind. And so that probably means I might end up paying twice, or I might be on the hook for. Anyway, I'll let you tell us what that person is.
Yep. So you are on the hook for 2/3 of the debt, regardless of the fact that like 2 months before we decided to divorce, I went on a trip with all my girls. You are still responsible for 2/3 of the debt.
Wow.
And so that means you are responsible for $176,000 of the debt. And
Okay.
I'm responsible for $76,000.
Okay.
At my $80,000 a year income is still a lot.
Yeah.
It's still a lot, but you're getting more. So I'm pretty happy about that.
That's
So
yeah. It is not fair, but again, that's the system. Okay.
yep. And that's the system. And that's when the laws of Minnesota are directly applied to your situation. When both parties are working together, you can agree to do it a different way. For instance, like if somebody wants to take more debt than they would need to under the law, then they could get more of the assets. Or you guys can just negotiate with each other about the debt and the assets. And with both of us being burdened by a lot of debt, which, by the way, I see at least a couple times a year in my divorce cases, what are we going to do now? What in the world are we going to do with all this debt, Jeffrey?
Okay. So from what it sounds like, Krista, you just handle the legal side, which is simply to break down the debts on who pays what or what percentage. So now we want to look at, now that we both know what we owe, how do we handle that from that perspective? Okay.
Ooh, and one thing I did forget to say is that then we need to pick like which debts we're going to pay. And so then we would go through a process and we would start with the debts that are in our name. So if I have to take $76,000 of debt, I would start with my student loan, which is 50K. So that's
Okay.
like a lot of it right there. So I need another 26K. Oh, and then I'll keep my auto loan. That's 20,000. And so I need to find another 6K. I'll take my medical bills. That's 1,500 and
15, I thought it was 15,000, but all right, 1,500.
1,500.
All right.
And then I'll take my Wells Fargo Bank $3,000 credit card. And you
Okay. Okay. So now does that add up evenly to 76K for you?
Yep.
Okay.
It's
So
within like $500.
$500. Okay. So here's a question for you before I jump on.
Okay.
If let's say you are liable for 76K and I'm liable for the 176, and are we allowed to let that lean into the other? So let's say I'm thinking here, trying to see. So let's say all the debts, let's say it doesn't break up evenly, like 76 into and then 176. So let's say a portion of that leads into mine. How does that get handled? Does that get agreed on?
Yeah, we want to make it as close as possible. Somebody might have a little more than the breakdown or a little less. And that's another thing that you would negotiate during mediation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Okay. Cool. So we're both in a lot of debt at this point, right?
Yeah.
It just wasn't working. Tried everything. It just wasn't going to make sense in the long term. So we decided, okay, we got to go through this process. Now we're in a lot of debt. Now the good thing is we both make decent money, right? For society, making 80,000, and you're 80,000, right?
I'm
I'm
80.
okay.
Yep.
And which are both solid numbers to be able to survive society for the most part, minus debts, right? Not including debts. But so what we'll have to do here is this, because we're not just dealing with debts, we're also dealing with everyday financials, everyday aspects, right? So talking about place to live, whatever that looks like, food to eat, right? So everyday financial movements, everyday spending, all of that. So one of the things that each party will have to do is track everything, right? Take a look at your financials, take a look at your income and expenses on the daily. So expenses could go into, we can break that down to savings, investments. You can break that down to debts. You can also include just regular expenses, whether it's your utilities, your bills, right? Those type of things. You also want to break that all down into categories, right? And that is important that we, from just a numbers perspective, you understand, okay, what percentage of my expenses is debt related? What percentage of my expenses is regular bills or just my livelihood? So essentially wants and needs, right? And then also within the needs, debts are tied to the needs as well, right? So you want to be able to break that all down. And that helps you because when you are in a position where maybe things are tight, you can really look at things like, all right, so I'm spending this on a bunch of wants, this amount of bunch of wants. I probably don't need to spend this much on coffee every single month. Maybe I do need that. Maybe I don't. I don't need to spend this on my hair and nails every single month. I don't need to spend this on entertainment every single month. I can reduce that for the sake of this goal, which is to pay down this debt, right? So now I'm sure working with the creditors will determine how much time we have on this debt. If there's any timelines to this debt, maybe we might now, the other part is this. We might be able to settle. I don't know how settlements fall in place. So let's take a look let's take our credit cards, for example. we might say, all right, so let's say we're on the hook for, let's say one of the credit cards on the hook for 7,000. If, let's say I'm the one with that, and I don't remember whether you said I was the one with that or not, but let's say I'm the one on the hook with a credit card for 7,000 with the Wells Fargo, I believe. So I could decide to keep that account open and simply manage paying down that debt. Now, if I feel like I'm way overwhelmed, I don't want to keep these things open, I'm going through a lot, I'm going to find a way to close certain things down while still maintaining decent credit, because that's another factor that comes in, right? So what I could do is I could connect with the creditor, close those accounts down so it doesn't actually hurt my score that bad. It will hurt me from a closing accounts perspective, but it's not going to hurt me from a late payment perspective or missed payments, right? So now I can close those accounts and possibly settle with that creditor. So that helps to reduce that debt if we look at it that way. But let's say I want to keep those accounts open, then I have to, in other words, I have to pay those debts to do that, right? So now, no settlements, accounts are going to stay open, right? So having written down all my income and all my expenses, I now have to see, all right, what room do I have? So let's say we'll take you, for example, you have 76,000 in debt, right? Based on each one. Now, typically you want to be able to find a way to break them down simply so it's easy. So you're not overwhelmed by thinking, I got $76,000 worth of debt, right? That's going to overwhelm you. That's going to hurt you. So what you want to do is take them one category at a time, one piece at a time. All right. I've got the medical bill. That could be the cheapest one or the smallest amount, $1,500. All right. When can I be able to pay this by? And again, the only way to truly know those numbers is to have written down everything, knowing all your income and every possible expense. And a lot of times what happens is that somebody might just sit and think about it and say, I know I've got this bill, this and that debt and this, whatever. No, the best way to do that is go into your statements, your bank statements, all your bank statements. If you only have one account, great. If you got multiple accounts, go through all your bank statements. Look at the last 90 days or more. Whatever can help you give you a best financial picture of what you've been spending. If you can go back an entire calendar year, perfect. You can go back some of the previous, let's say you're in January. This all happened in January. You want to go back 6 months prior just so you can get a best financial picture. Once you have everything written down, now you can understand, okay, let's say I'm bringing in 76,000. I'm not even going to say making 76,000 like net or gross income. Let's say net, right? Just to make it. So if I'm bringing in 76,000 net, divide that by, let's just say 12, right? So let's assume I'm bringing about 6,000 a month, right? So that lets me understand, oh, no, we're doing 80, you're making 80,000.
Yeah.
So let's say that's the thing, 80,000 of net income and not necessarily gross income. So divide that by 12, you're talking about, again, about 6,600 and change, right? So if you take that's 76,000, it was about 6,300 and change, I believe. It was like, what was that? 76,000 divided by 12, 6,003. So if you wanted to tackle that right off the bat, that means you have nothing to live off of, right? You can't break that down like that, right? So what can you honestly manage? So this is where you do the minimum payments on all of them, and then you figure out, how do I tackle each one? Right? You take the one, like the medical one, the 1,500. Let me pay that off faster, right? So there are different pay down methods to utilize. There's what we call the snowball method. There's what we call the avalanche method, and there's a hybrid of both. And there's the do whatever you want kind of method, literally, right? But the concept of the snowball method is to take the smallest debt, pay that off first, while still handling the minimum payments on all the other debt. Then you take the excess that you paid towards that lowest payment, that extra, once that is paid off, you take that and you add that to the next payment, to the next debt you're dealing with, right? Once you're done with that, you take that excess, add it to the next one. That's the concept of a snowball. So think about making a snowball the size of your fist. and you just rolling the snow, you're just making it bigger and bigger. By the time you're done, that helps you actually to be able to pay off debt faster. Then the avalanche really deals with taking the maybe the not just the minimum payment, but you're dealing with the highest interests and you tackling those all first, right? So there are different methods you can use. Again, you can use a hybrid of both, whatever works for you. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is you want to maintain your financial character, which deals with credit. You also want to maintain just your financial peace, which means I can be able to not let this debt overwhelm me, but be able to still live, right? You also have to be able to live now within your means. That's the biggest part. Christy, no more vacations for now. Sure. No more vacations with your girls for now, or minimize the vacations with your girls because you might still need to blow off some steam because, man, this divorce just got crazy. You spend years in this, your mind is everywhere, right? But rather than going to run off and spend all your money and forget the debts, which will then tackle or trickle into your credit and mess it up for you in the future, in the near future, you want to find a way to minimize certain expenses that you don't necessarily need, but still you're a human being, right? You want to be able to, again, blow off some steam, but not to the extent that you were doing before, because prior we had joint income. Now it's lower percentage, right? So that's the approach, and that's the simple approach. Just a reminder again, writing everything down, income and expense. Go back to your bank statements to truly know what you spent. And not just look at the statements, but export that information down either on paper so you can be able to separate them from not just income and expense, but breaking the expenses down again to bills, whether wants and needs, which can be broken down into bills and savings, debt, investments, whatever. That will give you the best picture to know how to tackle this. All right. So that's honestly how I would approach it. And man, if you're watching this and you have questions from the financial side, let's connect. If you have questions from the legal side, definitely got to connect with Christy on that. Does that answer the question, Christy?
Yeah. And something I want to point out that made me think of is that, yeah, when you get divorced, remember that you only have your income now. Unless you're getting child support, which will become part of your income, or possibly spousal maintenance, which will become part of your income, but you don't have access to all the income, that you need to change your spending patterns, even if you didn't have debt. I used to work in bankruptcy law, and the top 3 causes of bankruptcy are divorce, unemployment, and disability. So people need to completely change their mindset about spending after divorce.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that breakdown. Christy, any last words, any last thing before we end?
The amount of debt that we talked about today is not super typical, but it can get that way. And a more typical amount of debt when divorcing is around $100K. And this is debt other than your mortgage, because the mortgage is a whole separate thing because that's attached to the house. And so that gets divided differently based on who keeps the house and all that jazz. So most people who are divorcing who don't have that much debt. So if you're at home or at work or wherever you're listening and you're like, I don't have that much debt, I don't need help. Oh, you still need help. You just don't need as much help as a couple who has $252,000 of debt.
Yeah. Thank you for the breakdown, Christy. And this example was very solid, allowing people to be able to see practical example of what things could be. Again, thank you, Christy, for your time. Thank you for just working with me on this. Sorry about our divorce. That's funny. But Clausen, thank you. Thank you for just taking the time to watch this. Again, connect with Christy, connect with myself with any help that you do need. And feel free to share this broadcast, this session with others so others get a chance to also learn. All right. So until next time, thank you, Minnesota. We'll talk to you later.